Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Instagram live conversation. I'm your host, Jason Haas. My guest this week is a friend, somebody who I have looked up to in the world of wine for a couple decades, someone who has an even longer tenure at his workplace than I do here at Tablas Creek. This is, of course, Dave Gates, the Senior Vice President of Vineyard Operations of Ridge Vineyards. So I can't wait for you to meet Dave if you don't know him already. But as I always do, while we are waiting for people to join, I'm going to share a few pictures as to what's going on here at the vineyard. The big story is that we are getting close to harvest. We think we might have fruit coming in as soon as next week, maybe off of the estate, probably starting with some vineyards from further inland, Sierra foothills, maybe East Paso. But we are cleaning. We are doing lots of sampling, so I've got a couple pictures of Austin there running some samples from the Pinot Noir for the full circle over at our place. We've got pictures of Caitlin in the lab testing the juice that we've got. So basically, we are at the point now where we are trying to make sure we know where everything is. Doesn't mean that it's imminent, and in fact, I'll share a few vineyard photos that will show you that it's not super imminent everywhere. So here, for example, is a Counoise cluster. Clearly not about to be picked. Still a lot of green berries, and there's big chunks of the vineyard that won't be even all the way through veraison for another few weeks. So it's not like everything is coming in, but there are things that are looking pretty close. For example, let me show you some Syrah that I saw earlier today that looks, it doesn't look wildly different than it will when we'll pick it. This is probably 3 weeks out still, but getting close. The white grapes are going through veraison as well. You can see, there's a luminosity, kind of a yellowness to the color that there was not before. It was greener before. And then even the lighter skinned red grapes like, let's say Muscardin, kind of fun to see a kind of a rare grape. This is not a grape that's particularly dark, but you can see it's most of the way through veraison, and it's probably a month away from getting picked. So that's the big news as to what we got out in the vineyard. It looks really good. I'll share a couple of photos that will show you a little bit of kind of canopy. So this is a Counoise block. You can see, again, we're only partway through veraison, but Counoise is not a super vigorous vine. It often is a little on the kind of brownish side as we get towards September, October. It is not. It is still bright green. I will show you another example, looking up into that Muscardin, same thing, this kind of bright green foliage. Things look really healthy. We feel like we're in pretty good shape to withstand what looks like a little heat wave that's coming through the next few days. Not brutal. Probably will just touch 100 here, but not get much above that. Okay, I am going to stop sharing. Hopefully that gave you a little taste of what things look like here. And then I am going to invite Dave to join the conversation. And hopefully this will work just as smoothly as it did during our test. So, sending through the acceptance now. Keep fingers crossed that it all is straightforward. Hey, there we go.
It worked.
It worked. Technology is
That's good.
amazing
Yeah, when it
when it
works, it
works.
is. Yes.
Until
Hi,
it's not.
Jason. Yeah.
Excellent. So I don't know if you were watching. I did give a very quick introduction to you and some of the reasons why I'm excited to talk to you at the very beginning. But for anybody who was not watching then, my guest is Dave Gates, Senior Vice President of Vineyard Operations for Ridge Vineyards. Working on, I believe, year 36 of your tenure with Ridge.
Yes. 37th harvest, 36 years. Ah,
Amazing. Amazing.
yeah, yeah, no
Um,
kidding.
Cool. So I like to start at the beginning, and I didn't realize until I started doing the research for this conversation that you grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I loved it as a kid, right? You don't know any better when you're little. So my favorite times besides summer when there wasn't school was when we'd have a really bad snowstorm that would like shut everything down for a week, and there would be no power. So you'd have and no school, so you could go out in your snowmobile and it didn't matter that it was 20 below zero
Right.
and really windy. It was just super fun. So I did though. When I graduated high school and was going to college, I basically got as far away from Minnesota as I could and stay in the States. So I went down to San Diego, UC San Diego. So on the
That's
beach,
pretty
yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
was that a like I want beach and nice weather decision, or was there something else that brought you to California?
Mostly beach and nice weather. They also, yeah, and also back. This is a long time ago, right? So UC San Diego had kind of just started up. There were only four colleges on the campus. I think there are 12 now.
Right.
They were supposed to build it out to like 16, so it was like brand new. And back then, if you got into the UC system, you could transfer anywhere, and all your credits would carry on and all that. So it was a little bit academics, but mostly beach.
Yeah. What did you
Definitely.
come out to study? What initially what did you think you'd be doing?
Well, I kind of was going to perhaps be an engineer because my two older brothers were engineers, had gone to university or going to University of Minnesota, and so I thought about that. But and I also kind of liked the sciences. But the neat thing about this Revelle College was that they made you do all the humanities and everything too. The first 2 years you couldn't declare; you had to take everything. So that was really fun.
So I'm curious, like growing up in Minnesota, was wine on your family table?
No. It's a little bit like we'd have maybe a little bit of wine during the holidays, right? Thanksgiving or a Christmas meal or something, but it was not very good. And it was either a little bit of champagne or Manischewitz or something like that. So not so good. It's the Midwest. Minnesota is like the number one brandy drinking state in the and we also drink a lot of beer back then. So yeah, wine
Did
was out, but in California, it kind of became part of what I liked.
Right, that was my
You
question.
know.
Is like, did you have a moment where you kind of discovered wine? And if so, do you remember the wine that or wine or wines that brought you to that discovery?
Yeah, well, it's a little embarrassing, but might as well share all, right? No, so being a starving student, I couldn't afford very, much, but there was a little Spanish wine from Rioja that came in a glass bottle with clay on the outside, like Riunite or something, and that was affordable and it tasted okay, and you could go and buy a little bit of cheese and a loaf of fresh French bread, and it's like, oh, I can see where
Yeah.
this is really nice. And another one, a big shout out to when I got to Davis, a big shout out to Wente Gray Riesling. Do you remember that at all?
I don't
Yeah.
remember it, but I
Oh
know of
yeah,
it.
it's Trousseau at Trousseau Gris, but they back then it was called Gray Riesling, and that was a very inexpensive white wine that actually was nice.
So, I mean, you mentioned that you ended up at Davis. You got a
Yes.
degree in viticulture there. How did that happen?
Um, well, at UC San Diego, I realized that engineering was not my shtick, so I transferred to Davis because they had an agricultural, department there. So I originally signed up for plant science, and one of my first professors there was I was taking it. I call it an easy 6 units called Plant Science 2, where you grow veggies and memorize some botanical terms and stuff. Well, the professor was a professor of viticulture. His name was Lloyd Leiter, and he is a sweetheart. He taught me how to bud, and he and I got along pretty well. And he said that I should study viticulture because it's a great way to make a living. His little saying was that if you grow grapes, you could make wine out of them, or you could pick them as table grapes, or if last resort, you could dry them and sell them as raisins. So you always had a market for your grapes. That was Lloyd. So and by then I was thinking, okay, this is really fun. I found some students there that there's a DEVO, Davis Enology and Viticulture Association, where they were doing wine tastings and stuff, and it's say, yeah, that you could actually make a living growing grapes. This is fantastic. Sign me up.
So, what was your first like job in wine?
So I was very fortunate getting my master's under Mark Cleaver, and he went all over the state doing these viticultural experiments. So I got all this really good kind of inoculation, right, into all the different aspects of wine, from very big growers to very small growers. My first real job in the wine world was with R.H. Phillips, 1984. They were brand new. I was their first vineyard hire, and they had what did they have? They had like 10 or so acres of French Colombard, Chenin Blanc, and Sauvignon Blanc. And then they had 50 acres of Sauvignon Blanc in the ground and another 100 acres of a mix of those varieties in training. So it was like they expanded very quickly. And that was before they discovered Rhone wines. They grow some really nice Rhone wines in the Dunnigan Hills there. So yeah, that was and Clark Smith, who was he was a fellow student at UC Davis, a couple years older than me, and he was their first winemaker and stayed with them for quite a while. I was a one and done 1 year, and then I went to Napa.
So I remember reading somewhere an interview with Paul Draper that you were hired in 1989 kind of to bring some professionalism to the vineyard side of things at Ridge that had grown organically but a little haphazardly up until that point. I'm
Yes.
curious as to like what was Ridge like when you started there, and what were your sort of initial impressions?
Yeah, so when I first got to Ridge, number one, at Monte Bello is an absolutely beautiful property. It's you go up this road and you think you're there, but you're only about halfway there. So you just keep going, and all of a sudden you're at the top of the world, looking down on basically Silicon Valley. And there were a few vines in the ground, and in fact there's a block of 7.5 acres that had been replanted from the original vines that planted in 49. Had been planted in 88, so they had just been budded that spring, the spring of 89. And the first person I met in the field was Rafael Dorado, and he's doing this is his 43rd vintage this year. So he's been the vineyard foreman, from then on. We had a consulting viticulturist or consulting vineyard manager, Fred Peterson, a good friend of mine, who has Peterson Winery in Dry Creek Valley. He would come down like once a month and give Raphael some direction and stuff, but that was kind of it. So I made sure that that we kept mildew out of the vineyard with a more coherent spray program, and then started working on stopping cultivation where in the steep sections, and to try to keep the topsoil in place, and yeah, and just kind of brought a little more. Uh, Maybe that's Paul's word is right. A little more professionalism to and Rich of had been buying fruit from. And then when opportunities arose, especially in the early 90s, being able to purchase these vineyards, like do a lease on the Geyserville property, which then in 2015 we were able to purchase, purchasing the two halves of Lytton Springs in 91 and 95, and taking out a lease on some other properties like the Jim Samara Ranch on Montebello Road. So it's not that we were growing a lot case-wise as a winery, but we were actually becoming more estate fruit, and that was really fun. Yeah.
Actually, I'd love you to talk a little bit about the kind of range of vineyards that you are responsible for. I mean, I know it's a lot because there's a lot that you farm yourself or yourselves as a team, and then there's also a bunch that you buy from. Like, you can give people a sense of what that entails.
Yeah. So we have two wineries. We have Monte Bello, which is in the Santa Cruz Mountains. At Monte Bello, so it's a mountain property. So there are these ranches that kind of work their way up the slope of Monte Bello. And two of the ranches we lease, and two ranches of the ranches we own, including the Torre property, which is where our tasting room is, and then the Peroni property at the very top of the hill at 2,600 feet, which is where our production facility is. And I have a great vineyard team led by Kyle Terrio and Vicky Cordero and Rafael, of course. and we farm that in-house. Then you have to switch. That's an hour south of San Francisco, an hour north of San Francisco, in Sonoma County wine country. Dry Creek Valley is our Lytton Springs facility. And so that has some vineyards that mostly Zinfandel vineyards, but also some of the Rhone varieties that we grow, that are made at this earthen building, which is where I am today at Lytton Springs. And so that's a like 300 acres of vineyard that's estate, and then just a little ways away is our Geyserville property that we also farm, and that is another 100 or so acres. So it's those are our estate vineyards, and then we buy fruit from all over. And Paul Draper has made wine from hundreds and hundreds of vineyards over the years, and but we've kind of zeroed in for Zinfandel wines, northern Sonoma County. So that goes anywhere from Cloverdale, the Buchignani Ranch, to Alexander Valley with Stone Ranch and Demostheny and Boatman, over to Russian River, so west of Santa Rosa with Mancini and Pepera, Balani. So some really neat old vineyards of Zin and mixed varieties that are, all the other varieties there are either Chardonnay or Pinot Noir, but what grows best there is Zinfandel and Carignan. So um, and then going down, sorry, I had to get that plug in. And then going down to Sonoma Valley, we have the Pagani Ranch, which we love. Over in Napa, we there's this really sweetheart family, the Fredianis, just outside the Calistoga city limits to the south, that where we get a little Valdegui or Napa Gamay and some Charbonneau, which was back in the 40s or so, kind of mistakenly called Merlot when Merlot was selling well. There's some varieties like that. Let's see, Contra Costa County, so the East Bay in this beautiful sand. We buy some fruit from Morgan Twain Peterson's Evangelo Vineyard, and then the Gonsalves family that have been farming there for 3 generations. They get some beautiful Carignan, which we got here at Lytton Springs yesterday, and another 20 tons today. So harvest has started here. It's going to start smelling like a winery in a day or two when the grapes start fermenting.
That's always
And
such a
then,
such a great
right.
moment.
Yes, it is. Yep. And then going all the way down to Paso, we have the Benito Ducey Vineyard, which the first vintage there was a pre-Paul Draper wine, 1967. It was called Templeton. And then in 76 on, we've always made a Paso Robles Zin or a Benito Ducey Ranch Zin. And then recently, I think 2018 was the first vintage. We started experimenting with some Grenache Blanc,
Yeah.
and that's a blended wine. And blended vineyards. So we've used Adelaida from day one, Fossil Creek, which is another Ducey property, another partnership of Ducey's, which is in the where's that, the Willow Creek district. And then and for a few years, we also used some fruit from Halter Ranch that we purchased, and that's a blend which is right near you.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was a blend of it's always a blend of Grenache Blanc with a nice little slug of Picpoul and sometimes a little Roussanne, and that we love that wine. It's doing very well.
That's delicious. Um,
Yeah,
so
thanks.
okay, so that's a lot to wrap your arms around in any given
Yes.
year. Like, how do you divide up your own time? How do you decide what you do personally?
So it depends on the year. It depends on the timing of the year. So lately we've been doing some planting at Monte Bello, which it's not a lot of acres, but it's very intensive because of the hills and whatnot. So a lot of my time is spent making sure that the planting gets done there. And then as far as my vineyard team, so I've got Kyle and Vicky at Monte Bello. I've got Mauro Maldonado up here in Sonoma. So they help me out with the growers. They're taking over the grower responsibilities, visiting the vineyards and whatnot. So, and I'm kind of the budget guy, so I put the hammer down on on the vineyard budgets
Lucky
and
you.
the yeah, lucky me, and also work with the growers as far as the contract negotiations and stuff. And it's a tough time
Yeah.
in the wine business right now, but we're working really hard to sell the wines that we've made and keep buying the grapes that we buy, because we have some beautiful vineyards that we purchase fruit from, and we want to continue to do that. So yeah, that's so I, yeah, and I drive a lot. I put a lot of miles on my truck.
Sure you do.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of them, but like, what do you feel like the biggest changes are that you've seen at Ridge in the whatever 3.5 decades that you've been there?
You know, it's, I think that we have over the years, Paul has done a really good job of searching out and getting some really great individuals to work on the team. So we have built up a team from and so the winemaking team has always been good, and it continues to get better and better with John Only being in charge now. And that's something that he's always been keenly aware of. But you know, Paul, for all of his saying that he's not this and not that, he's like one of the best marketing minds that I've ever seen. He knows what he has in Lytton Springs, Geyserville, and Monte Bello, and he knows how to kind of market that out there. So he's gone out and found some really good people to help that in the wholesale marketplace to make sure that the wines are sold correctly there. So getting them into the right accounts, the right restaurants, and whatnot, and also on the direct to consumer side. So we have this amazing team that I can't say enough of, and that level of professionalism is pretty neat. And our CEO and president Mark Vernon is a big part of that as well. He's really helped build out the team and keep everybody on board and focused. As far as the wineries go and the wines that we make, it's always been so we have our core wines that we can't lose focus on. So Shauna Rosenblum is our winemaker at Lytton Springs. She's the Zinfandel queen. And but you know what her strong point or suit is, I think, are white wines. She does a really good job with white wines as well. Um, so those wines that we really focus on are our mainstays. But then we've always had a rotating cast of wines, some of which we've had for a long time, like the Paso Robles Inn, the Benito Ducey's Inn, the Pagani Ranch. The first vintage of that was 1991. We've made it every year since. So those are grower wines that are kind of have become a core part of what we do. And then we have some other areas where we search and find. And when you're buying fruit and from a grower, sometimes, this is back in the 90s, you'd find some fruit, you'd make a really nice wine out of it. The grower would get a reputation, and then the grapes would get stolen from you, which, that's fine. That's part of the game. There's also when you're buying the fruit, um, I'm not going to say there's a glass ceiling on Zinfandel, but you can only charge so much for Zin, and in Napa Valley you can't compete. Zinfandel or Petit Syrah can't compete with Cab. So we had a lot of, or not a lot. We had some vineyards on Howell Mountain and Spring Mountain that Zinfandel was no longer economical for them to grow, and those
Right.
vineyards got sold and converted to Cab, so we lost the source. There's a Barbera vineyard within the town of Sonoma that we made for a couple of years when I got there, called Rancho Pequeño. And it was really nice Barbera. Well, the vines are getting old. He pulled out the fruit, even though we protested and said, "We'll pay more, we'll pay more." And he replanted it to Chardonnay, and which was, good for him, bad for us. And I think it was like 5 years later, he called me up and asked if we wanted some Chardonnay from Rancho Pequeño, and I said, "No, I wish, but what I'd like is some Barbera." But anyway, so that happens, right? So you have a mix like that. But the other thing that I like to say is we like to experiment, and that's part of what we've always done. I mean, our ATP, Advanced Tasting Program, our wine club, it was all about that. It was looking at what can we do better. First, it was exploring all the different Zinfandel vineyards around, and then it became, okay, what other varieties can we do? Like the Rhones, when we purchased Lytton West in 1995. It had some Syrah, which is really nice Syrah.
Right.
And Grenache does really well there too, especially the Tablas Creek clone. And And we also like the Mataro there, but the Mataro doesn't stand on its own here very well. I don't think it's quite hot enough or something. But a blend, a Rhone style blend, GSM or whatever, ours is more SGM, does really well. So that's something that we looked at. The wines tasted good, so we kept doing that. And
And I,
likewise the Grenache Blanc, right? I having been a member of Rhone Rangers for a long time, going to the tastings, I saw the Grenache Blanc that you guys brought in does really well in California. And so we bought a little bit in 18 and showed it to our distributors. We had a distributor summit and they said, yes, we'll take it. So we started making it and it's been a very good success. So that's kind of how I've seen the change. It's a little more thoughtful
right.
and a little, yeah, a little more professional, maybe. That's a good word.
And I realized as I was asking the question that like what stands out with Ridge for me is the continuity rather than the changes. I mean, yes, obviously vineyards will come and go, fruit sources will come and go, but I feel like there's this longevity to the ideas that you have and the way that you approach them, and also to the team that does this. And I'm sure that those are connected. That feels like really what's one of the things that's really extraordinary about what Ridge is and does.
Yeah, I second that, and I think that a lot of that again, I'll go back to Paul. When he had tasted a lot of pre-prohibition California wines and just post-prohibition California wines, and as well as some really some of the best wines of Europe when they were actually affordable. And that's what he kind of cut his teeth on. And so when he got to Monte Bello, he realized that that could stand up to any Bordeaux, any of the best wines in the world. Likewise, Lytton Springs and Geyserville, he knew that those wines, if they were treated with respect, could become really good wines. And so he knew what he had. And it's almost not a self-selection, but I call a lot of people that have stayed around that ridge, like myself, as we are lifers.
Yeah.
And there's something that happens if you really subscribe to what we do here. It's something that you can build a career around.
And I don't think it's a secret that we at Tablas Creek have looked to Ridge as an example at lots of different kind of places in our history and in the way that we approach things. But and nor is it a secret that like my dad and Paul were good friends.
Yeah.
But I think that combination of kind of knowing who you are and having that consistent thread with what you do, but being as relentlessly experimental as you can within the bounds that you've set for yourself feels to me like something that we really look to you all as a great example of doing that.
Well, yeah, thanks, Jason. It's not easy, right? But you have to you just have to keep pushing, and a lot of it is following people's passions.
Yeah,
If somebody on the team really has an idea and you throw it out there, then and it sticks, then we run with it. And the main thing is, and this is again, this is another Paul saying, is that I don't think he said it, but he lives by it. Is it takes years and years to build your reputation in the wine world, and one bad bottle to kind of spoil that reputation for any consumer, any single individual consumer. And so we are relentless on declassification of any wines that kind of don't meet our standards. And so that's important because we make a lot of different wines. We have 40 SKUs or whatever it
right.
is. But they've all got to be good. They've all got to be unique. They can't disappoint. And they all have to bring value too. I mean, our wines are not inexpensive, but we feel like they, punch above their weight, right? They are worth more, perhaps, we feel they're worth more than we charge for them.
Yeah. I think that's a secret to the longevity also is that ultimately you do have to offer value. I mean, it doesn't mean you
You
have to
have to.
offer things cheaply, but you have to offer value.
Yes, yeah. There's a difference, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'd love you to talk a little bit, given that my guess is that most people who know Ridge probably know it more for Cabernet or for Zinfandel. But I mean, you and I have served together on the board of the Rhone Rangers for more than a decade, and I know just listening to you talk about your excitement with some of the Rhones, it's pretty contagious. Can you talk a little bit about Ridge's work specifically with Rhones?
Yeah, so we back in the early '90s, we were making some Mataro, which is the old California term for Mourvèdre. Yeah, from the Delta, from Contra Costa County, and we went back in the early aughts, and then we come back in the late eight 17, 18, 19 to buy the Mataro. What is a standout for us that we consider a Rhone wine is the Carignan. So we have some Carignan from that we buy from the Buchignani Ranch, which is up by Cloverdale in Alexander Valley. And we also, what we just got in yesterday and today from Contra Costa County is Sandy Lane Carignan. And these are Buchignani vines were planted in the 1920s, so during Prohibition, all the way to the 40s, by the Buchignani family. The Sandy Lane grapes were planted in the 1880s and 1890s, own rooted in this Delhi blow sand in the middle, which is now housing, right, at Antioch, right, in Antioch and Oakley. And the only reason why they're still there is there's a big PG&E power plant on the river, which there is not very far away, and they have all these major transmission lines that crisscross and run all over the place. Well, you can't put houses under transmission lines, but the vines are already there, and so they have these easements and leases that these old farming families, including the Gonsalves and Evangel. Frank Evangel was the last of three generations to farm those vines, and this viticultural treasure sitting in amongst all these housing developments. It's amazing, and the wines are, own rooted grapes grown in sand. The tannins are silky and smooth and wonderful. So those are some of the grapes we buy on the outside, along with the Grenache Blanc. And I'm also excited, thanks to you, at Tablas Creek, is that we're going to get a little bit of Beurre Blanc, and next year a little bit of Claret Blanche to try in this Grenache Blanc blend. So maybe adding a little more complexity and floral notes to it. So that should be really fun. And those are grown by the Ducey family in Paso Creek.
Cool. Well,
Yep,
that'll be fun.
yep,
Um,
yep.
Hopefully, the picture of the Bourboulon that I showed during the intro that just like gets you that much more excited for it.
Yes, and those are big clusters.
They are
It's
big clusters.
yes,
They're
it's
vigorous. They're fun. They're fun to work with.
Yep, yeah, very good. And
Um,
and then if I could just on our state vineyards, we have a couple different programs or wines that we make. One is the Syrah Grenache Mataro that I talked about, and the other is our Syrah, which we co-ferment a little Viognier with, and those we've been doing for a long time. And then another wine that is on the upswing for us is a rosé. Now it has a little bit of zin in it, sometimes like 30 or 40%, but the backbone of that is Grenache and also some Cinsault and Counoise and whatnot. So that is, I consider that on the Rhone style rosé, and it's delicious.
okay, we got a question from Gary asking where the Grenache Blanc is sourced from. Dave did say that it's sourced from a couple of vineyards down here in Paso. Um,
Yep.
so that's fun.
Yeah.
And there's somebody else who commented on the new tasting room you have here in Paso and
Yes.
in city. So you talked a little bit about Ridge's like kind of long history with making wines from Paso, but now you actually have a place where people can come and visit and experience the wines here. Can you give people a
Yeah,
lowdown on
so
that?
it was an idea that Ryan Moore, our senior vice president of direct to consumer sales, had kicked around for several years, and it's one of those things where it's a great idea long in the making that came together really quickly. So the reason why we would like a third tasting room is that we feel like there's some consumers, especially Southern California consumers, that can't always make it to the Bay Area or up to wine country. And we didn't really want to go all the way down to LA because LA is like five different markets all in once anyway.
Right.
But we thought about a little bit closer to home, like Santa Cruz, but that's just too close to Monte Bello. Paso Robles is up and coming. The restaurant scene there is off the charts. The visitation is up. I mean, I think it's a really great location, and we've been making wine there, making wine from grapes grapes from there for a long time. So we'd been on the lookout, and this opportunity came up close to Tin City to sublease a tasting room space, and I think within 2 months we had it up and running. I mean, it's just incredible, and the response has been really good. We're really happy with it. It's and the response from the Paso wine community, including especially you, Jason, has been off the charts as well. It's really wonderful to have that great reception and the positive reviews from consumers and whatnot. So it's really fun.
Awesome. We're thrilled to have you as part of the community. It's great.
Yeah.
Sort of a
And
feather in our cap as Paso Robles that you all are here. It's
yeah, no, we're very happy, and it's right next to Primal House, which is even better. Yeah.
um cool. I realize we've been talking for half an hour already. I have like four more questions. Do you have like 10 minutes to
It's
stick around? Okay.
for you, Jason. Yeah,
Oh,
any time. Yeah.
okay. So I want you to talk a little bit about the work that you do with the Historic Vineyard Society.
Yes.
I've had Morgan on, I've had Tegan on also. So the people who are regular watchers of this have gotten a little introduction, but I know we always have new viewers each time. Can you talk about the HVS a little bit?
Yeah, so it's a nonprofit that was started in 2010, and basically what we do is try to educate consumers. It's an educational nonprofit about historic vineyards in California, and it's mostly through tastings, and we have a neat little website that has all these vineyards listed, and our definition, the HVS's definition of a historic vineyard is 50 years or older. So the planting date 50 years ago or more, and at least a third of the vines have to be from that original planting date. So that doesn't sound like a lot to growers or to viewers out there, but that means that it's a working vineyard because
Right.
vines don't live forever, and but somebody, usually extended family, several generations of families, thought enough of those grapes to keep them in the ground and actually care for them and replant the missing vines and whatnot. And so those for me as a viticulturist, they're treasures because of the genetic heritage in there. I mean, we found some really cool vines, like the oldest Pinot Noir in the state is grown at Lytton Springs here. One vine planted in 1901. Some of it there's a crazy grape called Cabernet Pfeffer. It's grown quite a bit in San Benito County, but it's a tiny production, right? The oldest vines of that are grown in the Old Patch, and it planted in the 1890s in Alexander Valley. It's actually its real name is Mortau, so it's an old Bordelais variety, totally extinct in Europe. They
Right.
just have some, just had a little bit of it. So it's really that to me that's the beauty of that. And like the Carlisle Vineyard in the Russian River Valley has like 28 different varieties on there, some over 20 varieties in it. The Old Patch has 16. Some of them from the Jura, some I mean it's way cool. And those are all especially those old vineyards, pre-prohibition vineyards, that's all budwood that all these California pioneers brought in, whether they're nurserymen or from the agricultural commission formed in Sacramento, that would send people like Agustin Herazzi out to collect samples and stuff. And that's what I dig. That's what I really like. Our main one of the main clones of Cabernet that we use was planted in 1949 at Monte Bello, and it's from Fountain Grove Nursery, which was a nursery, a winery, a commune that was started in the 1890s and ran up until the 1950s. It's really cool to take that wood, clean it up, get rid of the viruses on it, and then propagate it and see what it does. And we love what it does. So that's what I like about the Historic Vineyard Society. And the other thing are the talking with the growers and their stories of these
Right.
vineyards. It's wonderful. It's really cool.
I remember Morgan telling me that there's something like 2 dozen grapes that have been identified in these vineyards that have no comp, that they have no match in the database, and maybe that number has grown since then,
Yeah,
but
they're unknowns. Yeah, yeah.
which I think is amazing. It just reminds you how much diversity there has historically been out there in the world of wine, and how much was lost during phylloxera. I mean, these are presumably grape varieties that like had a European origin and were wiped out during phylloxera, never or its aftermath, and never replanted, and yet they're here in California.
Yes. Yeah, it's
Um,
pretty cool. Isn't that crazy? And I also think that we also lost something after Prohibition here when, and it's been a great marketing ploy, but when we started to do varietal wines, and that was, a way for American wines to compete with the rest
right.
of the old world, right? But what that's done is really dumbed down the amount of grapes grown in the world, a number of varieties. And some of our best vineyards, our Zinfandel vineyards, are not pure Zinfandel. They're mixed plantings from pre-Prohibition vineyards, and and there's a reason for that. They make a better wine when you co-ferment.
And I love the transparency that you always have on your labels, where you may call it Zinfandel, but you're going to show the 7 varieties that went into it with the percentages that come from each one. And that's definitely an example that we have always looked to in the way that we label our own wines.
Yeah, and that goes back to that's actually pre-Paul Draper as well. That goes back to the founding families of Ridge. They were scientists, and they hated, as they learned about wine, they hated European labels because you couldn't tell what was in the bottle. And so they thought, okay, when we grow wine and we make a label, we're going to tell you what's there. And that label hasn't changed since the first vintage, 1962. Just the font's gotten a little bit bigger, right? That's about it.
Awesome.
Well, yeah,
Okay, so I mean, 36 years is a really long time to be anywhere and doing anything. And I'm curious, like, if you'd share sort of what has kept you interested for so long, and how do you maintain that kind of curiosity of what's coming next that comes through in like every sentence you say.
yeah. Um, well, at the base, I'm a farmer. I mean, I grew up on a farm, and farming is gambling, right? It's calculated risk every year. There's so many things that can go wrong. You do the same thing every year, but every year is different. So you have to adjust to the conditions. You have to kind of know what you'd like to have happen, and then adjust as things change, or you get an obstacle in your way, like a bad heat wave of a couple of years ago or whatever. You have to adjust and try to make the most of whatever you can. So you can, and you can also never rest on your laurels. You always have to get better, and that's something that that always gives me endless energy. And also in the wine business, so it is agricultural, right? You're growing a crop, but that crop, and there's this harvest, this excitement at harvest, because you have one time of a year to pick the grapes, right, and make the wine. But what I love about the wine world is that you're making something that lives in the bottle, lives in the glass. It's this beautiful story that, especially when you have these vineyards like the Pagani family, right? They've been having grapes, or growing those grapes since the early 1900s, late 1800s. And so there's all these stories that kind of go with that, and you can taste that in the wine, and the wine improves with age, right? It changes. It's not, I mean, not to disparage any other crops, but it's not wheat or corn
Right.
as a commodity crop. It's you can have commodity wines, but they're still wine. It's still something that you share with people, that you can, that tells a story.
I've been talking to people a lot recently about how like wine is an opportunity to travel in space and time. Like it's a snapshot from a place, from a year, that you get to enjoy and share with other people, and you can revisit these places, revisit these years. It's a remarkable product for that reason.
Absolutely. And the other thing I love about wine is that some of the best wines in the world are grown in some of the best places in the world. And there's nothing like going to a region and drinking the wines and eating the food of that region for a lunch or something. That's like that's the way to really learn about wine, in my opinion.
For sure.
It's really fun.
Okay, last real question, and then I'm gonna get you to share how people can learn more. But the last real question is: so it sounds like you just started the 2025 harvest. How is the
Yes.
growing season looking?
The vines look fantastic. So this is the third year of really good rain in Northern California. the biggest difference this year, we've gotten less rain this year than 23 and 24 seasons.
Yeah.
But this year, the step of the progression of the rain was like beautiful. So not too much rain all at once, just really nice, consistent rain all winter long. The vines love that, and they're responding to that. They've never looked greener. Even the old vines with a lot of virus still look beautiful and green. The clusters are set really well, so they're full clusters. There's not too much. We haven't had to do much thinning, but it's going to be a good crop. It's been a cool summer, all summer long, no major heat spikes. I mean, it's going to get hot today. It'll get 98 or something, 97 here at Lytton
Yeah.
today, but that's not 110, right?
Yeah.
So, and vines, as long as it's less than 105, they're happy. Um, and that shows in the flavors. So it reminds me of 2019, um, 2014, although that was a drought year, but it reminds me of those because at 19 bricks, 20 bricks, so still 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away from picking, they taste great. That means that they're going to taste even better when they're ripe. So I'm very excited about this year. And it's been, knock on wood, it's been tough as far as mildew control, powdery mildew control, because it hasn't been hot. It's been mild, and that's mildew likes that weather. But otherwise, it's been a breeze to grow the grapes. It's really nice. And if that holds through harvest, it'll be not a stress-free harvest, but it should be a really good harvest. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, we're super optimistic about this year too.
Yeah.
Can't wait to compare notes with you
Yep,
after it's all over.
yep, it'll be fun.
Okay, cool. So we've talked about the new tasting room here in Paso and the other opportunities that people have to taste Ridge. If people want to learn more, what's the best way for them to do it?
Yeah, so we have a great customer service outfit. If you want to do landline or cell phone, it's 408-867-3233. We have a great website. Again, that's another thing where you can do live chat, or you can do whatever you want. It's actually a really nice website. You can explore on it, and shows a lot of stuff about our philosophy and our vineyards and our wine tasting notes. We have vintage charts for Monte Bello, Lytton Springs, and Geyserville. So if you have older bottles and you want to know what they're tasting like, you can go, and it'll kick you to a link to show what people have if they've opened them recently, what they think about the wines and stuff. So very informative website, and really good people in the tasting rooms, really, really knowledgeable, lots of WSET and what the wine professionals, right? It's really, really fun to sit in. Every now and then I get to, go to the tasting room and just eavesdrop, and it's really fun.
I can vouch
Yeah,
for that. Everybody who I've
yeah,
ever met who's worked at Ridge has been just a pleasure. So
yeah. Awesome,
awesome.
Jason.
Well, Dave, thank you for sticking around for those extra few minutes. Thank you for taking the time for the conversation in the first place, and thank you for everything you do for wine in California and in America and in the world. So
Yeah, well,
pleasure.
thanks, Jason. And I have to say, it's been such a pleasure meeting, becoming friends with your father, and what he did with the Pran family at Tablas Creek, what you continue to do for Tablas Creek. It's off the charts. You are a jewel of the wine industry, and
Oh,
thanks for that. Yeah,
thank you. As I said, like if there is a winery we try to model ourselves off of, it's you guys. So
yeah, right on.
okay.
Awesome.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. If you are watching and you're in the world of wine, good luck with your imminent harvest. And I'll be back and see you all in 2 weeks. Thanks, Dave.
Yep. See you, Jason.
Thanks, everybody.